started my entrepreneurial journey really not knowing, and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital where I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. I fell into one relationship a few years ago where I actually became a victim of I didn't know if I could do it, but then I had a wonderful support system. I went to therapy. I dealt with those issues. I came back from it and stronger than ever. And I wish people would know that whatever low you're feeling, it's not the end. There is some way out of it. It's so easy to kind of wallow in your emotions. Once you start doing that, it's a spiral. It's a downward spiral. To name it is to tame it. It's really just about talking about it. Keep talking about it. Never mind the stigma. Who cares what they say? Focus on yourself.
So, Erica, I know we were just talking before we started, and you have this incredible story, and I know that the audience is going to be super inspired. And we're going to talk all things around investing, what you look for, but we're going to start heavy today.
Sure.
And you have
Let's
this
jump right in.
journey. You have this journey.
Yes.
You wrote this book. You had moments in your life where you were going to give up, and you did it. How did that work for you?
Okay, so roughly about 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. It was a whole thing. I started my entrepreneurial journey really not knowing what I was in for. And I found myself in over my head, seriously. And I've made some mistakes. I've made critical mistakes and not knowing as well what I was facing internally because I didn't know I had it. I ended up being a victim of cyberbullying. That's not without my own fault, also. I did have a hand in instigating it in a way. Um, and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital where I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. Of course, I got checked out. I went into therapy, but there was also a journey of that, of coming back from that, and that was extremely difficult. I'm not gonna lie. My self esteem was shot. I didn't know if I could do it. In fact, I fell into one relationship a few years ago where I actually became a victim of I'll say it out here, abuse. And it was tough. Again, I didn't know if I could do it, but then I had a wonderful support system. I went to therapy. I dealt with those issues and I came back from it stronger and stronger than ever. And I wish people would know that whatever low you're feeling, it's not the end. There is some way out of it. How I dealt with it, I kept creating. I kept at it. I knew what my strengths were. In fact, I think, that word game Boggle, where you shake yeah. I was very good at Boggle, and I'm still very good at Boggle. And I would beat other people with Boggle. And I'm like, if I am good at Boggle, I'm good at other things. So I kept creating. I consulted with different entrepreneurs. Um, I helped out in a foundation that gave educational access to underprivileged children. I headed that foundation actually with a few programs, and I kind of evolved from there. I realized, okay, I have my talents, I have my gifts. Let's focus on that and keep going, and maybe atone for things I've done wrong, and maybe climb up from whatever struggles that I've had in the past. So yeah, here I am now with that.
Well, thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable.
Of course, yeah.
I've also had moments in my life that, might run parallel or similar things, like you said. And sometimes I've always struggled with, as I start to slip back into something, it's like creating habits in that moment so I don't go backwards. Besides being creative, is there something that you do in those moments where obviously business is stressful, investing is stressful, and I think stress sometimes can cause, these feelings and these emotions that are very negative. How do you get yourself out of that feeling when you see it starting?
It's so easy to kind of wallow in your emotions. It's very easy, and once you start doing that, it's a spiral. It's a downward spiral. So I talk. I reach out to my therapist. I reach out to friends. I play with my niece and nephews. I make sure that I'm not alone in these moments. It's hard, of course, but you know, if you share your struggles, um, other people who care about you, would gladly step in and really help you out.
I think we're seeing a lot of stigmas around, mental health and feelings and just going to therapy and getting help. I think we're seeing a lot of these stigmas. The walls are breaking down. At least in the US, it's been that way for a while. I know in the Philippines, I spend quite a large amount of time every year there. I think there still is, at least from what I've heard, there still are some stigmas around mental health and therapy, although it seems like it's getting better. But how do you feel around this space? Because I think founders, it can be a lonely place, right? It's a place where we probably need help, but it's not always so easy thinking about how people will judge us if we do say get therapy or talk about it, let's say on social media.
Right, absolutely. So my my thing there is, to name it is to tame it, essentially. So if you know what you're dealing with, it's easier to kind of tackle it from there. With the Philippines, yes, is a stigma in the US as well, but like I said, find your people. It's not hard once you start talking about it, and people will stand up for you. And there are resources back home in the Philippines or here in the US that you can turn to for free. In fact, one of the ventures that I've dabbled in is a mental health startup that allows employees of companies to avail of these mental health services, and companies can easily make it affordable and even free for their own people to access good mental health facilities. So yeah, it's really just about talking about it. Keep talking about it. Never mind the stigma. Who cares what they say? Focus on yourself, right? That's what I always say.
One of the biggest game changers I've seen for founders isn't another pitch deck or another tool or even another investor. It's how you manage sales. And I'll be real, when we first started scaling, we were getting leads, we were getting business, but the pipeline was so messy, leads were falling through the cracks. We weren't following up. We were losing tons of revenue and money, and everything was all over the place. It was chaos. Then we started using Pipedrive, which is today's sponsor and the number one CRM tool for small and medium businesses. But the thing I love most about Pipedrive, it actually helps you work smarter, not harder. It gives you real-time deal recommendations, writes your emails with one-click prompts, and even summarizes entire email threads in seconds. For us, that meant no more guessing who to follow up with or what we said. Last week, we focused on closing great clients and more. If you're a founder or creator trying to scale your sales, you need this. Over 100,000 companies have already used Pipedrive, and you can try it right now. Go to pipedrive.com/founders for a free 30-day trial. No credit card, no commitment. Just head to pipedrive.com/founders and see why I trust it. I like that. And I like the fact that you're investing and you're a part of these companies that are making impact and things that
Absolutely.
obviously are impactful for you. So when you're investing across borders, because you have companies that you've invested or your own ownership in or equity in all different parts of the world, is there a universal trait that every founder has, no matter if it's in Asia, if it's in North America, if it's in Europe? Is there one thing that you're seeing like, wow, this founder has it? Or the most successful founders I've invested in, no matter where they are, they have this one trait?
Absolutely. Yes, there is that common trait, and that is, the best ideas, first of all, come from people really close to their pain points. It's not necessarily the loudest voices in the room, but these are people who have lived and breathed their pain points. For instance, I've invested in a founder whose son has lives with autism, and he created an app that tackles nonverbal children with autism, that helps them out and gives them resources as well as their families. And he closed his pitch with saying, at the end of the day, I'm just a dad who wants his son to tell him that he loves him. And for me, that was impactful. And I could see his path to profitability, but I could also see his passion. They're obsessed with the problem and not just the pitch. So they're easily coachable, but they're not easily shaken because they know at the end of the day that they are solving a problem that exists that they want to help solve.
Was there ever a founder that you backed that other people were like, I don't think this makes any sense. I don't believe in this. And it really paid off for you?
Yes, there have been several, but again, that one founder stands out where I think I wrote the first big check for him, where he said that we- I literally approached him and said, "I like you. Can you please pitch to me?" And he did. I saw his fundamentals. I saw his pitch. I saw how passionate he was about the subject and where he was going. And honestly, right now he has revenue. He has downloads, and I believe not just the Philippines, but in Canada, in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, the United States. He has downloads in several countries, thousands of downloads. So yeah, I think it's paying off.
I mean, that's amazing. So is there something that you think about before you write this big check to someone? You've heard the pitch, uh, you're sold on it. Is there something that you go over, or something that you think to yourself before you actually write that check and give it to them?
I actually slap founders with questions that they haven't necessarily heard before, or things that they're not used to. One question I ask is, "What are you going to do if you're going to fail?" And that kind of rocks them. I see how there's no right answer to this, by the way. It's just I want to see how they're dealing with um, the mental stress of being a founder and whether I can help them in one way or another. I ask, what would it take for you to ditch your day job and, you know, just embrace this hustle or this new startup completely? What would it take for you to make this your entire life? Um, I evaluate the qualitative and the personal questions. Aside from the data room, I have my CFO who lives and breathes the data room, and she's awesome. And their answers with that, together with the answers that I ask, the questions that I ask, they're kind of I see how chemistry, founder funder chemistry, and I see how the resiliency of the founder as well when they tackle their own struggles or their own challenges when building a business.
I like that founder
Yeah,
funder relationship, and then
chemistry. Yeah,
resiliency. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, absolutely,
business is all about failures, right? Like one
absolutely.
failure turns into your next success. So what do you think that founders are doing wrong when they approach an investor? And then what are a few things that they should be doing right?
Okay, when approaching an investor, I've had cold emails, etc. Honestly, cold emails are fine. But you have to acknowledge and do your research, I believe, for who your funder is. I've had one pitch where it was a cold email. They approached me and they actually asked, "So what do you do anyway? Are you a supplier? Are you an investor?" I'm like, I'm in my head, I'm like, I'm easily Googleable. You can you can Google me. That takes 2 minutes. That for me, if you don't know who is at the table, please make sure that you do, or else you just don't belong there. Another mistake that I see is just lack of knowing their numbers and knowing what their business is. I tend to ask what external factors there are that could make their business a success, and they tend to get confused by that question. What current events or what things that are happening outside your own business um, that will make your own business a success. And if they answer that, that means they know the landscape out there and they don't just have tunnel vision.
It is wild how you have ChatGPT and LLMs. It could do all the research for you, yet people are still not prepared. I always crack up when I get those emails or messages. It says like, "Hey, company," right? Like it's totally not
Exactly.
specific to the person.
Exactly.
Definitely that's like a delete. So I started thinking about something that happened a couple of years ago or many years ago.
Mhm.
My wife, who's also from the Philippines,
Mhm.
somebody reached out to her because they wanted to invest or they wanted to acquire one of her companies, and they
Mhm.
said, "Do you need to talk it over with your husband?" But as in, but they were saying it as in like you're not really the one who made the business,
Yeah.
your husband did, even though I had nothing to do with it. And
Okay.
I always thought of that like, wow, that kind of inspired me to do this show, to do things, uh, just because it's, you know, there are stigmas out there, and it's quite sad in the business world. I see this. We go to events, and people will ask me, "Oh, what do you do?" Thinking she's like just the wife, even though she's the business owner at this event, and I'm just attending.
It totally happens to me, whether it's yeah, with my boyfriend, my partner. He's amazing, but they tend to ask him first. He doesn't notice it, but I do, and I think it just happens so often that sometimes even I forget, and that's kind of sad. But also the reality is, it's also a filter, a good filter for me to gauge how people think in a way. Am I just this person, this Filipina that is with somebody else, who may have boosted her up? Maybe, but you know, it's not. That's not the truth. So it's a really good filter for me, socially, business wise, etc.
So how do you navigate that when you're? I imagine if you walk in a room with maybe other investors, do the founders talk to you? Maybe you're the main investor. I've heard of these issues where they won't talk to the woman, but they'll talk to the men, even though the woman's like the main investor or the one that's controlling the money. How do you navigate these scenarios?
Well, actually, my partner's great at saying, "Oh, she's the one. You go talk to her. She's the one with the money." Same thing with me. I also, it's not about really asserting myself, but I quietly watch. Honestly, how will they, how will they navigate this space? How do they navigate themselves socially? That's also something I watch out as an investor. Again, funder founder chemistry. How how do they view a woman investor in general if they're not a woman? It's I see a lot of nuances, and what I like to do is really watch those nuances at play, socially. I mean, I travel a lot, so sometimes it's a culture thing, sometimes it's a personality thing, and I try to discern what is what.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really like this funder founder chemistry. I think that that's very fascinating, and I haven't heard people talk much about that. Um, talking, going through your journey of what we were just talking through, has this inspired you to be able to fund more maybe female led organizations? Because I know women, from what I've read, they get like a couple percentages of money is being invested in women owned or led organizations. Is this inspiring you of how you look for companies to invest in?
Oh, absolutely. I don't just invest, honestly. I try to advise, I connect them with the right people. I try to amplify what they're talking about or what they believe in. And I think it's really about giving the microphone, giving that amplification to those who may need it the most. Investment isn't just about, or angel investment isn't just about the profit or the bitch. It's about creating an impact. And for me, creating that impact is giving that piece, backing founders who are not just diverse, but are reflective of the world as it is and how it will be. And that for me is really quite important.
Wow, that's very special, and it excites me because there's so many problems we can solve.
Absolutely.
And you talked about it earlier. You solve the problems that you many times have experience in. So there's so many problems that will never get solved if these people are not being invested in, and these people are
Absolutely.
not given a chance. So if you think back to the many founders that you've come in contact with, that you've had experiences with, and you look at the ones that were absolutely the most successful out of those bunch, was there one or two things that they did along their journey that other people can learn from?
Oh, they failed. They absolutely failed and got right back up the horse. They have experience in either closing a company, selling a company, starting a company. They have corporate experience. They have the network. They've failed miserably certain times in their life, but they got back right up there. It's really about coming into things with that wisdom of what it takes to be an entrepreneur.
I was thinking about this a few days ago around you were mentioning the failure piece. And I've always wondered, how do investors see this? So if you invest money in me and I fail, and then I come back to you and say, Erika, I failed. You watch. This is the reason. But I've learned this, and this is my new idea. I would like for you to invest in my new idea. I always wondered, how does that play out, knowing that the money that you first invested is now gone, and now they're coming back again? Is that a like? How does that all play out? I've always wondered.
It's about how they got back up. First of all, what was the issue in failing in the first place? It could have been something external to the founder, something internal to the founder. Um, I've had one where the founder was going through a very rough divorce. And that, of course, affected her mentally. But at the same time, um, she she was able to pivot in a way. Yes, she closed that first business, but on that business, she kind of built up something else that was similar to it, but she had the knowledge about it. And I think I always love a good comeback story. So again, it really depends on what the issue was, how they're rising up, etc. And of course, I mean, again, I love a comeback thing. It's my thing. So I would really like to see a founder come back from wherever it is that they failed.
Thank you for sharing that, Erika. I also love a comeback story. I mean, that's like Rocky. Like
Yeah,
the
of course.
premise of
I mean,
so
yeah.
many movies is like we love to hear the comeback story. I know you just written a chapter in a book, Unreserved: Rewriting the Rules of Business, and I know it's also written by Ashley Deland, and people can
Yes.
find that on Amazon.
Yes, absolutely.
What can they expect when they read this?
So this is a book of 24 women who wrote their own chapters of resiliency in a way. These are comeback stories. These are women who've suffered deaths, abuse, oh, all these things that some unimaginable things. And it's a story of how they rose up and got to work and started their own businesses, investments, etc. I'm actually the last chapter there. I close out the book. So yeah, you'll read the finale. You'll read more of my story on that in that chapter. Yes.
Amazing, Erika. Unreserved: Rewriting the Rules of Business. I can't wait to read the book
Thank
on
you.
Amazon. But I'm
Yes.
super inspired today. You gave so many nuggets and takeaways. This has been amazing. And
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
I'm so inspired by the fact that you're just global, that you're in all these different places. You're not focused on one market, you're focused on many markets. And I can imagine how that just also helps the portfolio as a whole. And I can't wait to
Absolutely.
hear more. I know you have so many things you can't talk about that are coming down the pipeline. So you got to
Yes. Yes. Yes.
come back at some point.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it again. But Erika, thank you for joining us on Founders Story.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah. I loved my time here. Thank you, Daniel.